I'm joined by Mrs. Jessica Peterson, author of The Prodigy Way, one of our administrators and coaches here, and also Mrs. McDonald. She's one of our 3rd and 4th grade teachers here, and you're a longtime Prodigy parent. And so I'm really interested to hear your opinion on this because you've had the full scope of what a Prodigy teacher is like, because having had 4 children go through the program and now becoming a Prodigy teacher yourself, I'm just really excited to dig in and hear your thoughts on this. What was it like when you had your first children at Prodigy, the first year here?
Yeah, that's a great question. We sent our 4th grader and 2nd grader at the time here, and they had had a public school experience before that that wasn't going great for them. And so we were just looking for some place where they would be loved and cared for at a higher level. My older 2 children are adopted and minorities, and so they found that to be a hard place at times, especially in elementary school and on into high school. And so we wanted them to be loved and cared for. And I actually started to care more about that in some ways than I did about the education piece, even though obviously as a teacher, the education was of utmost importance as well. And so that immediately they were placed in Mrs. Peterson's class, my older one, and then the younger one was in Mrs. Grammer's class. And so we got the best of the best off of the bat. And so, and that's immediately what we began to experience, was them being cared for and loved and their story being understood, because that is a unique story. That's not a story that every student has. And they had come out of a place where they were really labeled pretty quickly and inappropriately. And so to have them be able to grow and thrive and not immediately be identified in one particular way was a big benefit for them.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then obviously you had 2 other children then who came as well. And did you see that level of teaching change as your kids moved from teacher to teacher?
I mean, it changes just with personality for sure, but no, I mean, the level of love and care has been consistent for all of my children, all of the teachers that they've had, and we've had a bunch. But that's all been the same. It's just teachers are gifted in different ways and have gone about showing that. And I don't want to leave out the education piece, and doing education in amazing ways, but definitely different vibes depending on the classroom.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So Mrs. Peterson, from an administrative standpoint, what do you look for in a teacher before they come to teach at Prodigy?
Yeah, so I would say this is a big thing, again, that separates us from traditional education. I think in a traditional way, the things that are valued are education, all your qualifications, all of your years of experience, all of your, what are your credentials? What are the credentials, education credentials that you bring to teaching? And in a lot of ways, what we do is kind of anti-cultural, and the way we hire teachers is also that. Because the number one thing we're looking for in our teachers is love for the Lord. And that's one of the first questions we'll dig into in any interview, because we're trying to understand the teacher's personal relationship with Jesus, not only because they're stewarding the children, but because we value this mission so highly of loving and caring for families. And so we know that if people have a good love for the Lord and a good relationship for the Lord and are seeking after the Lord, then it will come across day to day in their teaching every single day, and the work that they do with parents and the work that they do with kids. And so love for the Lord is number one, and I don't know where else that's valued the most.
Just to clarify, that looks differently than a statement of faith.
100%. Yeah, we on leadership team, as we're doing interviews, we do listen to a person's response. And so if a person says, well, I grew up in this church, and that's their only tie to religion in some way, and we don't see that personal connection, that daily devotion to Jesus, that daily, how are you learning, how are you growing as a Christian, if we don't feel like we see that person's not really a candidate for us, for a lead teacher. And sometimes, and I will say, and you may have experienced this, and I definitely experienced this, coming to Prodigy, being in a culture that's so full of people seeking after Jesus, you do grow in your own relationship with the Lord as you're here. It's part of being here, but it's super important to us. That's what I would say we value more than anything, because you can have a teacher with all kinds of credentials, and we've had them come our way, who have had awards, who have had so many years of experience, and that does not necessarily make a great Prodigy teacher. So number one is love for the Lord, but number two is I would say humility and teachability, because what we do at Prodigy is so different from what everybody else is doing. And so anybody who is trained in a traditional way, in some ways we have to do some untraining or some unschooling of what we want teaching to look like at Prodigy, and putting that relationship first with the Lord and relationship with the students, and valuing that and putting that at the forefront is different. And so we're looking for people who can be teachable, who can
My brother, he was an incredible soccer player through high school, and he played in college as well. And he had a coach, a club coach, who played professionally for the Canadian national team a while back. And this coach said that Lucas had the potential to go pro, not necessarily for his skills, but for his coachability. And so I think that that's something that's pretty interesting across the board, is it requires a certain level of humility and coachability, like teachability. You have to be willing to be taught, be willing to change if need be in order to grow. So that's a great quality. I think that's great that we encourage that.
Well, and our teachers we like to call our teachers our lead learners. So we need our teachers to have qualities that we want our students to have, because they are modeling those qualities every single day. So the idea that if I go into Rebecca's classroom as a coach and I can give her some feedback and she can receive it and process it in a good, healthy way, allows her to lead her students to do the same. And so we're really looking for that character. Who is this person that we're putting in the room with these kids? And a lot of the other things are trainable, but character is not, and that love for the Lord is not.
And so I stayed home for many years, but even if I had wanted to come into the classroom, I can say pretty confidently that the last several years, one of the things the Lord has grown in me is some of that teachability and the humility to see I need people speaking into things where I probably wasn't like that when I was younger as much. And so I wouldn't have been a great candidate as even with an education degree, even 6 or 7 years ago. And that's just something I think that the Lord's developed, that where I'm like, please tell me everything I can do better. I would love to know it all, and learn from these people, these experts, and these people that have more experience.
And it's really about, Amy and I, we're in classrooms all the time. So we tell teachers, you're going to have to be comfortable with us walking in and popping in and chiming in. And so we need people who are comfortable with that. We need people who are open door and open to us being in there. And we have relationships with the kids in not the same way that you guys do, but we have longstanding relationships with the kids. We can speak into a lot of things that the kids have experienced in the past, how we've disciplined kids in the past, all of that stuff. There is so much autonomy here at Prodigy. We give our teachers a lot of autonomy as far as even discipline. We don't have step 1, 2, 3, this is what we want you to do. We have to have a lot of trust in the people that we put in place to make decisions that are right for kids and that are good for kids. And so again, it comes back to that character, that love of the Lord. We know that if we're disciplining kids, we're really discipling kids, and we need people who understand that, because we are giving them an open door to do what they think is right. Not just behaviorally, but of course educationally. When you talk about the individualization of 15 to 18 kids in a classroom, we are putting a lot of trust in these individuals to look at the child, study the child, know the child, and then determine the next right steps. We're not doing that for them. That's something that's completely different from every educational system that I've ever been a part of anyway.
Rebecca, could you speak to maybe what does that do in you, knowing that your leadership team trust you to do that as a professional?
It's a lot of work. I'll say that. And sometimes I would like a little bit more of a data print, or what, I don't know the right word for that, but some type of scope for how to be teaching. But it enables me a lot to be who I am, and to lean into my giftedness, and to lean into my particular mix of students in my classroom. And do things the way that works best for them from one year to the next, and even one season to the next. So I think just the freedom is, and the confidence, I'm like, oh, I can do this, because they believe in me and they think I can. So
yes, that's a great answer. What is so then in that case, I know people would probably be wondering, what does support and accountability look like?
We have, I would say, the highest level of accountability, in that we're accountable to the Lord. And we hire people that know that. Having a leadership team that's in classrooms all the time, is a high level of accountability. We have a high level of accountability with parents. This is another thing that comes into that, this mission work of what we do here at Prodigy as teachers. Mrs. McDonald just said it's difficult. It is. When she says that she comes as a parent and she values relationship over other things, the teacher has to respond to that and also value that alongside her. And so a teacher is juggling 18 sets of parents and what those parents value and what those parents think are important. And they're accountable to that because that's what we promise our parents that we're going to deliver. And so in so many ways, I've taught a class of 27 kids. In so many ways, teaching at Prodigy, even though you have the great ratio, because of that individualization, because of the mission work that we do, when you say it's a challenge, it's because it is. There's a lot that we're juggling and a lot that we're trusting our teachers with. And that's why it's important that their heart's right with the Lord. We look at it as a mission. We don't want a teacher who clocks in, clocks out, is ready to get out the second the time is over, and doesn't want to think about it. That is one thing that we have to walk a lot in this field, and actually any missionary has to work. What is an appropriate work-life balance? What is appropriate to give to the mission? And when is it okay to have boundaries and good, healthy boundaries for yourself and your family? And so that's something that we're always trying to improve and progress in, and I feel like we've gotten better through the years, whereas your parents, for example, when they first started, there were no boundaries. I mean, they were taking phone calls and working all hours of the night, and as we've hired more people and as we've grown, we've had to start putting more of those things in place because we want our teaching staff to be sustainable. We want teachers to enjoy their job. We want to try to make things, as much as it's a mission work and we want their heart to be in it, we want to try to support the needs of the teachers as well. And that's something Russell and Amy do really well. They do this so well. Unlike most bosses that you'd ever run into anywhere, they have lots of grace for when teachers need to take care of their family or when teachers have things going on. When your parents are so, I shouldn't say, but your parents, Russell and Amy are so awesome at leading what it means to have a heart for your staff. And they help us as leadership team do that as well. And that also, I think, allows teachers to have hearts for the families and the things that they're encountering and the challenges that they're up against, hopefully knowing that they're supported all along the way. And us as coaches, there are so many, in fact, every time I have new teachers that I'm coaching, most of the stuff that I field is, how should I handle this? Because they have the autonomy to handle things the way that they see fit. And a lot of what I do as coaching is saying, this is how I would do it. This is another way I've seen it done. But you know this kid best. You know the parents best. And so this is your call in a lot of ways. And we empower the teachers to make those calls and make those decisions because it is their relationship with the student and the parents is sacred. And we as leadership don't want to step into that and pop all of these things on them and make them do things that could hinder those relationships in any way.
Right. It's a good word.
Yeah.
Thanks. Well,
And it is what I experience already regularly.
Well, I know that there's a list of qualities in this chapter in the Prodigy Way that a gifted teacher has. Is that list that you have?
It is.
Say, do you think you'd want to just read through that list? I don't think we can break down each piece of it today, but if you just want to read through it so people know what we look for in a teacher.
Sure. So a Prodigy teacher loves the Lord. They understand that this work is mission work and will require more of us than a normal teaching position. They come to it with humility. They are capable of individualizing instruction and do the steps necessary to do that, even though it is more of a challenge. Their heart is in it and they're willing to do it. They empower the students. They look for ways to put the students at the forefront of their own learning. So they don't see themselves as like disseminators of information. I've got to be the person at the front of this room handing out all the information. They're creative, they're innovative, they're flexible. They adjust to the needs of their students. And they're team players. They work together with each other and staff. The thing about Prodigy teaching is a bit of a lonely thing. You're in a cabin, a lot of times with your CT all day long. We've now grown to where we have teams, but for a long time I was the only 3rd and 4th grade teacher, and I was making a lot of the decisions about curriculum and all kinds of things related to 3rd and 4th graders, and I was a little bit on an island. But being part of a team, knowing when you need help, knowing how to seek help is super important because we're doing things nobody else is doing. We can't just go look up how to handle this thing or how to teach this thing because nobody else is doing it. And I always say the best professional development is next door. And so we have to learn to work together, to rely on one another, to see the good in each other, to appreciate what we can learn from one another. And that's all part of being a team player. Again, people are in and out of our classrooms all the time, and that's part of it as well. And then, having the trust and autonomy in our teachers, we have to be able to have that. And all of those are important things, just to name a few.
Dr. Shanta Smith up at the university, up at SEMO, she has a quote that I really like. She said, "Prodigy is a place where teachers can teach and students can learn." Or no, teachers are free to teach and students are free to learn. That's what it was. And that was really cool. But she has a way with words.
She does, and that summarizes it perfectly, honestly, because in so many other situations, like I always say, Prodigy is a teacher's dream because you can do whatever you want to do. I mean, within reason, obviously.
Right.
But the sky is the limit. And in some ways, that's even more of a challenge because you can hold yourself you are accountable to yourself. We talk about accountability for a very high standard of what you can do. And a lot of times I would feel like, gosh, I could have done more because the sky is the limit. And so, it's a teacher's dream in so many ways. As a little girl, and I don't know about you, if you dreamed about being a teacher as a little girl, this is what I dreamed it would be. And having been part of another system where it was not at all what I thought it would be. And it wasn't at all what I didn't think that I was doing the right thing for kids. And ultimately, that's one of the reasons I left. And here I know that I am trusted to make the right decisions alongside of parents for these children, and that God created uniquely and divinely for a purpose. And the greatest gift you can give a teacher is the ability to see that in a kid. And we do that by not putting all these things on teachers, not all the paperwork, not all the this, not all the that. There aren't all, the bureaucratic hoops and things to jump through. It's simply teaching. It's simply studying the child, knowing the child, loving the child, and moving the child forward.
Man, just hearing you say that, it feels like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, it's a gift to get to do that. I think I wrote notes for each of my students for their Christmas present, and they were waiting on their desks this morning, and the first line of each of theirs said, "I delight in you daily," which is true 99% of the time. But one of the great privileges of being a teacher and a parent is that's what God does for us. He delights in us. He created us. We're made in his image. And so to model that for our students and to delight in them in the unique ways that God has made them, and to foster their interests. And I think of, when you think of gifted teachers, I think of Mrs. Albertson, and I do think that was her superpower, is that she was able to see the unique qualities in a student. 2 of my kids have had her. And no, that doesn't matter. At least 2. And she was able to see their unique gifts and their unique challenges, and she was just able to call up and out things that no one else saw. And it was incredible. We experienced it with both of our children with her. And so I would say that has been being able to do that, not at the level that she does, but seeing that and doing that and wanting to do that. But it's not because I want to, it's because it's how God treats us and how God sees us. So for that to be the driving force.
Yeah, that's awesome. Brittany Brown, one of our high school teachers, in one of our earlier episodes of the Prodigy Way, she said, really, as teachers, we're modeling what Jesus did. I think that's really cool because he did. Actually, we have a better student to teacher ratio than Jesus did. But yeah, we have a smaller classroom of students, and then the teacher is free to lead and teach those students and make it just very individualized. There's plenty of one-on-one time. There's lots of room for asking questions. The disciples asked lots of questions, and sometimes they looked goofy, and he was always graceful with them, and I know that's how our teachers are too. So
one thing I want to say here, one of the first things I actually wrote about, John, was when you were a student. In this chapter, I was writing about when you were a student in Miss Finger's classroom, and the first time I ever visited Prodigy, I walked in, and John was actually at the front of the classroom leading the class, and he was doing some kind of presentation, and then he told the kids to line up, and he told the kids to do this, and John was directing the class. And one of the things I noticed there was not only John's leadership, but how the other students were following suit, how happy the students seemed to be. And I think that is like if Prodigy has an it factor, people come here and they say, it feels different. Well, the Holy Spirit is here. That's a huge part of it. But if you look in classrooms, kids are happy. Kids are happy. And why are they happy? Because we're bringing them into relationship with the Lord every single day. And we have teachers who are in very close relationship with them. And what makes all of us happier? Like being in relationship. We're designed for relationship with one another. And these kids are seen and heard and valued all day by their teachers. And if we're talking about what makes a great Prodigy teacher, it's that connection that they have with their kids. And it is a special, special connection. I always used to say to my class, we spend more time today, every day, we spend more time together than I spend with my family at home. And this environment, this culture that we create together in this classroom, it has to be a safe space. It has to be a joyful space. And that comes from the teacher. And when you walk around classroom to classroom and you see kids who are happy and thriving, that is gifted teachers. And that is the work of the Lord, because not only are we looking for teachers who have a relationship with the Lord, but we're also putting prayer into every single decision that we make when we hire. It doesn't matter how small the position may seem. If it's just a few hours a week, we are putting prayer into who these people are that we're putting in with our kids. And Russell will always say the Lord has handpicked everybody who is here. And it is evidenced in the relationship that these people carry out with their students every single day.
And that's why we have such an amazing staff here. People will frequently ask my dad, they'll be like, how did you get these people? And he's like, well, I didn't, but God brought them here. Well, I'm afraid we're about out of time for today, but thank you guys so much for being here.
Thanks,
Our
Jen.
teachers truly are amazing.
They are.
And it's a hard job, but oftentimes the harder things in life are also the most fulfilling.
That's for sure. And as a mom, I think as moms, we can say like, Prodigy is such a great gift to families because we turn over our kids every day to people that we know are going to love them and care for them and be for them.
That's right.
And that's
got to bring
awesome.
such a level of peace to even our parents here.
I could cry right now about knowing who my kids have been entrusted to because,
the love and care is there every day. And
it's unmatched.
it's completely. It's unmatched. Yeah.
Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I think people will enjoy hearing about our teachers and how amazing they are and what goes on behind the scenes.
And then I would say, if you don't believe it, come see it.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's nothing like seeing it for yourself.
No, there's not. And in the meantime, though, until you're able to come and tour, make sure you get a hold of our book, The Prodigy Way. Jessica wrote this book, and it's truly incredible. The front half discusses the story behind Prodigy, and the back half talks in detail about the Prodigy 21. One of those Prodigy 21 was gifted teachers, which is what you just heard about today. So, guys, thanks so much for joining me today.
Jen.